Hello everyone. In this topic we'll discuss about tags. So what are tags basically? It's a name value key pair. So it's very important whenever we are dealing with resources on the Azure cloud. So basically whenever we are deploying the resources in the Azure cloud, we need to ensure those resources are properly tagged. So tags provide extra information. So tags are metadata. It will provide extra information for the resources which we are going to deploy, and it is also very useful for resource management, cost management and optimization, operation management, security, governance and regulatory compliance, workload optimization. Let us say I have created a virtual machine in East US, and I'll be able to name this virtual machine. I can name this virtual machine based on the operating system, based on the region where it has been deployed, and the name of the virtual machine itself. Let us say if I wanted to name this virtual machine, I can name the virtual machine as prod, and I will say East US, and the virtual machine name will be 01, and I can even define the operating system. If it is Linux, then I will say Red Hat for R, and if it is Windows, then I will simply specify Windows. If it is SUSE, I will specify SUSE, and if it is Ubuntu, I will simply make it as U. So the virtual machine, whatever we are going to deploy, we can name this as like this: VM03 Ubuntu prod region, and the virtual machine 03. This will be 04 and 02 for Windows. So like this, we will be able to name the virtual machine to identify the resources whatever we have deployed. So what if I wanted additional attributes to identify the resources whatever we are deploying? In that case, the tags comes very useful because it acts as a metadata, and what I can do is basically I can have the tags. Let us say I can enter the IP address because this is a name value, and I can, this is the name and this is the value which I have to provide for the tags, which is nothing but the key pair with name value key pair. And I can, this is the name IP address, I'll specify the name, and instead of specifying the region year, I'll location, I'll say East US, and I can have environment, I can specify production, I can also specify the operating system type, I can specify Red Hat Linux full. If it is Windows, I can specify in full Windows Server 2019 like this. And what is the status? Status is live or in production, and I can go on defining the tags. So I will be able to define up to 50 name value pairs. So this is very useful. Also, I can say owner. Owner is, if it is Linux, then I can specify this is for Linux team, and I can even go specifying about, and also I can go on defining other useful information like application which is running on this virtual machine. Let us say this application is inventory application. Say somebody wanted to pull up the monthly report based on any of these criteria. If I wanted to find out the owner of Linux, I wanted to take the billing only for Linux or Red Hat Linux, I can actually pull up using this particular tag. So this is very important. and also we can specify what is the criticality: very high, low, or medium. This is also used for governance and regulatory compliance. And also we can do workload optimization and automation using the tags. So the maximum tags what we can have for any given resource is 50 tags per resource. Let us say, how do I manage resource tag? We can manage these resource tag for the Azure resources using PowerShell, using Azure CLI, using the ERM templates, API, and of course Azure portal as well. So we will be able to modify, update, or create the tags using any of these tools. And also we can use Azure policy to enforce the tagging rules. Say suppose if I wanted to deploy any of the resources, it can be virtual machine, it can be web application. If I am deploying to the Azure cloud, the Azure policy, if it is defined to enforce the tagging, I need to use the tagging. So the tagging, it will be defined. It might be 3 tags or 5 tags, which will be mandated as per the governance and regulatory compliance. So we have to adhere to these standards and we have to tag. Unless we are not tagging, these resources will not be deployed to the Azure cloud. And the resources don't inherit the tags. Say suppose I have defined some tags. Say I have defined some 10 tags to the virtual machines like location, environment, operating system, status, owner, application, criticality. So all these tags I have defined for the virtual machine. Definitely it is not going to inherit by the IP address, by the storage, or by the network security group or the virtual network. So whatever tags you are defining, it will be defined per resource basis. Okay. You can define up to 50 tags per resource. So let us see what are the examples of tagging the resources. We can use the application name, the name of the application. So basically, as I said, it is a name and value. So we have the name and we will provide the value. So it is like IP address. So what is the IP address? You specify the IP address. So what is the region which you have deployed onto the Azure cloud? If it is East US, yes, East US. If it is Singapore location, Singapore location. If it is South India, you specify the region. Okay. And what is the operating system? And what is the version? So all this can be tagged. This is the name and this will be the value. And like cost center, we can define the cost center, owner of the resource. If it is, like I said, if it is Linux virtual machine, it will be handled by Linux team. If it is Windows virtual machine, it will be handled by Windows team. If it is a SQL server or Active Directory or backup resources, it will be handled by different teams. And what is the environment? We can define whether it is used by prod environment, if it is used by development or test environment. So all these we can define within the name value key pair. So whatever tags you are defining, it will be within the 50 tags limit per resource, right? And we can also define the impact by saying if it is mission critical, highly impact, or low impact. And if you have already defined the resources using mission critical resource, whatever resources you have already defined as the impact as mission critical, all those will be considered as mission critical. And if you have not defined any of the tags for the impact, then those resources will be considered as non-critical resources. So this was an overview about the tags. It is very easy whenever we are using the tags to identify the resources what we have deployed and where exactly we have deployed and what is the use of the resources which we have deployed. We can have proper lifecycle policy of these resources. Thank you for watching the video. If you like the content, please subscribe and share the video. Thank you and take care.